Tomorrow's game against Penn State is Ohio State's chance to remind everyone there's still a gap between the Buckeyes and everyone else.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Feel Good Friday edition of Locked On Buckeyes, which is your daily Ohio State podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, veteran sports talk host, delivering passionate coverage about your Buckeyes. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward, Mazda, Move and Be Moved. During today's show, I will unveil my score prediction for tomorrow's game, as well as discuss numerous distractions surrounding Ohio State's return to the field. But first, Ohio State's done a great job this year of separating themselves from every opponent that they have played. They have left no doubt on the field that Ohio State is clearly head and shoulders over their opponent. But then there are people around the country that might maybe have forgotten that thought, that Ohio State is the best team in the country. There's a gap between them and Indiana and A&M and everybody else in college football. Because when you're off, you're not playing, you don't have a chance to make a statement on that Saturday. So other teams might try to take that spotlight. And that's what you're supposed to do. If you're not at the top, but you're playing, you want to try to impress the pollsters so much they move you up to the top. But I think even if they made a statement a week ago while Ohio State wasn't playing, there is still a gap that would have been visible, even if somebody made a massive statement last week, because Ohio State's been that good this year. I mean, they've been great. Defense has been borderline historic. Julian Sayin has put up numbers that the sport hasn't seen in a very long time. He is super, super efficient. He is a guy that is throwing dots and darts all over the field. He is getting better at a very fast clip, and you put his progression with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, lights out, baby. You put this offensive line that is meshing and gelling and getting better, lights out, baby. This defense that has dudes at every single level, it's lights out, baby. This team so far this year has already separated themselves from everybody else in the country, and they haven't even really turned it into third or fourth gear yet. Now imagine if this is third gear so far, and they go into fourth gear in this portion of the schedule. Penn State, y'all better watch out. And I say this portion of the schedule because I imagine Ryan Day in his preseason prep for the year kind of broke down the schedule like it was mapped out. You have your first three games of the year: Texas, Grambling, Ohio, and off week. And that is going to allow you to not have an extension of training camp, but allow you to have training camp, get the guys ready for those first three games, and then kind of evaluate and not reset, but you kind of review where you currently are. After that off week, then you go on the road to Husky Stadium to play Washington. You come back home for homecoming to play Minnesota. Then you go on the road to, where did they go? Illinois. And then they went on the road again to Wisconsin. And that's the second portion of the schedule. Now, after that, you have where we were this past week. Another reset, an off week to kind of evaluate where Ohio State was. Now, you have a very young quarterback, and you have dudes on the outside. You got new faces in new places on defense. You got a new defensive coordinator, a new offensive coordinator, and a new offensive play caller. There's a lot of moving parts with this team, with the coaching staff, and a lot of new faces in new places. And Ohio State has still dominated everybody they've played. They have clearly showed, and they have clearly left no doubt on the field, that Ohio State is head and shoulders over every team they have gotten on the field to play. Indiana can't say that. Texas A&M can't say that. Other teams in the country that may want to take their claim and say, oh, we're the best team in the country, they have one loss. Alabama's good. They got a loss. Georgia's good. They got a loss. Oregon's good. They got a loss. Ole Miss, same story. Georgia Tech, undefeated, but there is a gap between Georgia Tech and Alabama and A&M and Indiana. There are gaps between even some of those teams in the top 10. Ohio State has an opportunity tomorrow, when they return to the field, to make another massive statement. Just go out there and play Buckeye football. That sounds very simple to say, But Buckeye football this year has been dominant. It's been physical. It's been fast. It's been loose. It's been fun. That's what you want them to play tomorrow. But also, turn up the heat. There's nothing wrong with turning up the heat just a little bit. There's nothing wrong with put more pressure on the team and say, hey, we have been huddling and going very, very, very slow this year. How about we just go a little bit faster? We can still huddle up, but move a little bit quicker. Instead of waiting until 8 seconds left on the play clock to snap the ball, snap it at 12 or 14 or 15 seconds. Why? Because you're picking up the pace. And as you're picking up the pace, that might lead to more plays offensively for you to put more points on the board. And if that is the scenario that actually works out, y'all better watch out for what's coming to Ohio State this weekend. I ain't gonna look ahead to the games after this weekend's game, where you have a road game against Purdue, you're home against UCLA, you're home against Rutgers on senior day, and then you got to go to Ann Arbor. We ain't even looking ahead to those. This conversation is solely about tomorrow, and Ohio State playing Penn State, a Nittany Lions team that is talented, but isn't gelling. It isn't playing as one unified body, and I say that thinking in my head right now. And I had a conversation earlier this year with an assistant basketball coach who had told me, he said, hey, Jay, like we're cool, so it's a casual conversation. But he said, man, there's a difference between a hooper and a basketball player. And I knew exactly what he meant. Now, you may be saying, Jay, like a hooper and a basketball player, that's the same thing. No. You could see a hooper, but a basketball player, it's a little bit different. There's a guy that can hoop that might not do well in an organized team setting. There's a guy that can hoop and that can fill up the basket and just be a stat sheet stuffer. However, when it comes to playing team basketball with some structure, he just doesn't do it very well. And I think right now for Penn State, they got a lot of talent out there. They got guys that can get drafted on both sides of the ball. Katron Allen is a dog. Tonight, Dennis Sutton can play. However, I think the issue with this team, and I said it all week, it's confidence. They're not playing as one unified body. They're not playing as one, and it shows up. And we're going to talk about some numbers here in the very next segment in regards to Penn State's defense that just speaks volumes about how this is not the normal way a Penn State team plays, not just with the talent, but in the confidence that they walk around with. Because if that were the case, these numbers will not be on my notebook to my left as we're on this show right now. Ohio State has a massive opportunity tomorrow to walk into the shoe, walk on the Nittany Lions, and inside of a blackout, show everybody around the country once again that Ohio State is clearly the best team in the country, and there is a gap between them and everyone else. Now, the blackout, a couple thoughts about that before we close up this segment here. I think it's weird to have it during the day. 100%. When they announced earlier this year that Ohio State was going to have a blackout for the Penn State game, when it was almost an expected thing that Fox would have this game be the big noon game, it just didn't feel right at all. Now, the issue is Ohio State doesn't do what Penn State does, which is dictate your biggest day and make it a night game. Where in the offseason, Penn State will say, this is our wideout game, and the networks follow with that. Ohio State could easily say, this is our blackout game. You guys follow us, not we follow you. So that's my thought with that. I think the blackout is a great theme. I mean, just wear what I'm wearing right now. This black old hoodie. I've been wearing gray and other colors every now and then. I got a black hoodie on right now. For those of you that are audio listeners, wear black. Black hat, black pants, black shoes. Just black the whole thing out. You walk in there and cheer the boys on the victory. As you cheer the boys on the victory, Ohio State's going to enter the shoe, trying to avoid numerous distractions that are thrown their way, that are right in front of them, surrounding the return to the field, because some of these distractions could derail Ohio State from accomplishing their goal tomorrow afternoon. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. this week's moment that moved the game forward is none other than Julian Sayin getting a lot more attention as he should and rising up the Heisman betting odds. He currently has the third best odds to win the Heisman Trophy, and I think with the way he has played so far this year through the first 7 games and projecting how he's going to play through the next 5, knowing he has a game in game number 12 to make a massive Heisman statement. I think Julian Sayin is the kind of guy right now that is moving the game forward and has a shot to win the Heisman Trophy in 2025. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you all for tapping Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. One thing I think about when it comes to this game tomorrow is some of the distractions and storylines that could cause Ohio State to lose their focus when they battle with Penn State tomorrow afternoon. One of them is with their OC. On this show specifically, I've done probably 3, maybe 4 shows talking about Brian Hartline being on Penn State's radar. He took a phone call, and the Penn State thing is weird only because of the school, and they just took Jim Knowles, and Jim Knowles was trying to finalize a contract while Ohio State was getting ready to celebrate a national championship, and that's weird, and that's just very, very odd. But now, with their bye week being in the same period as Ohio State's, they're now trying to prepare to play Ohio State while trying to pull Ohio State's offensive coordinator to Happy Valley. I understand the tactic. I think the timing is very interesting because this could have happened a while ago, but it didn't. And I think for Ohio State right now, they can't allow this to cause them to play the way they did a year ago against Nebraska. If we all remember, think back to it last year, Oregon lost, there was an off week, and then the Buckeyes get back on the field at home against Nebraska, and it didn't feel like Ohio State game should feel. Nebraska was not on Ohio State's level, even at that point in the season. Ohio State was clearly the better team, but you kind of sleepwalk a little bit. You don't have the juice you need to pounce on a team, and that team gets a little bit of confidence. Dylan Raiola threw a touchdown in the fourth quarter of that game. Ohio State ultimately won, but it just didn't feel like they were mentally locked in. And that same thing can happen tomorrow when Ohio State gets on the field because of a distraction with their offensive coordinator. And maybe it doesn't impact the players. Maybe it's Hartline and his mentals and him calling plays and leading the offense. Maybe you realize this is a problem. But Ohio State's been able to dodge distractions all season long and stay out of harm's way. They haven't been doing anything crazy that would cause them to get some negative attention. They just been playing ball, dominating everybody. And when rumors come up, okay, it's a rumor. We're not going to let that affect us. But I do think the Hartline conversation with Penn State trying to lure him in right now, I think that could be something that could mess up the mentals of Brian Hartline. The mentals of Ryan Day are a little bit different. And that's going to tie into my school prediction for tomorrow, as I may change it as we speak. Because Jim Knowles is about to come to Ohio State for the first time since, Ohio State won the national championship. And I say that because Ohio State, after winning the Natty, they returned to the famous stadium a few weeks later to celebrate winning the national championship, and Jim Knowles wasn't there. So Jim Knowles, the last time he was in Ohio Stadium, didn't have success. Well, the defense did. The team didn't have success. But the team lost. And that loss is going to probably sting because it was against Michigan, but also not being there for the national championship celebration probably rubbed him the wrong way. I'm not saying it was all his fault. I do think you try to leave a job in the midst of trying to celebrate winning a natty. Your boss might not like that, or your boss may tell you, hey, these are the rules, these are the guidelines. You're trying to go around them. This is going to be the consequence. So be it. I think tomorrow's game, Knowles coming back, could be. Now, this is one that can impact the players. Ryan Day spoke on a little bit earlier this week. But think about Caleb Downs, where Jim Knowles had a big impact It was very influential in Caleb Downs coming to Ohio State. There was a meeting that went down in Georgia. I believe Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, and Tim Walton all met with Caleb Downs face to face to try to pull him out of the portal to play football in Columbus. And Jim Knowles discussed saying he was kind of nervous for it. And I'm not trying to make fun of Jim Knowles here. I'm just being honest with him being real about this is important. This is not a normal player in Caleb Downs. And even back then, after his freshman year at Alabama, it was very clear that Caleb Downs was wired a little bit differently. Not just the way he played, but the way that he conducted himself, and he was just a little bit more mature than the average person. And so, with all that being true, I think that what you're going to find with Jim Knowles tomorrow is potentially a couple of wrinkles here. But if he doesn't adjust like he normally doesn't, you're going to find that Ohio State's going to realize what he's doing early and take advantage of it. And make sure that distraction doesn't mess them up. Another distraction that I don't think is as big as Hartline to Penn State and Jim Knowles going to Penn State is the poll coming out soon. And I do believe the CFP poll, I don't have it off the top of my head. I believe the poll comes out on Tuesday of next week. I'm going to look this up today as we speak because I don't honestly know. I don't normally. I look at the poll and know when the polls come out, the AP and the coaches polls. Do I put much stock in it? No, I don't at all. If I did, I would be a team that would need that as it comes out next week. I would need that poll to kind of boost up my own resume to help me solidify my spot in the playoff. But Ohio State doesn't need that. Ohio State takes care of all that on the field. But when you're human and the outside influence is big, and there are people, I will say a name, is Craig Sheeman, that of Locked on Big Ten. He said that he would not be shocked if Indiana was number one next week because of their resume, and they have a better resume than Ohio State. I didn't say that. He did. Go and watch his show. Go into the comments and let Craig Sheeman know how you feel. Because I don't think Indiana is going to be the number one team in the country next week. I think Ohio State, as we have said earlier in this show, has clearly showed that they are the best team in the country, and they have dominated everyone they've played. Yes, I understand that Indiana went on the road to Austin Stadium and won. That's a massive win. I'm not going to take that away from them. I am going to say this, though. Do you think Ohio State would only beat Iowa by 5? Absolutely not. And I'll leave it there with that conversation. But these are distractions. All of these things are real. None of the things we're discussing here are fake or things just to fill space. This is Hartline, that conversation, as you're preparing to play Penn State, that same school is trying to pull you over to their campus to be their head football coach. That's a distraction. Jim Knowles returning to Ohio State, that's a distraction. I'm not really worried about that one. I think Penn State's defense, it could be good. I think Jim Knowles is going to be prepared, but Ohio State's going to be better. Here's an interesting thing about Knowles and knowing Ohio State's offense. Brian Day knows Jim Knowles' defense. He knew it before he hired the man. Jim Knowles knows how Ryan Day thinks. I don't know if he fully understands Brian Hartline's offense the way that Brian Hartline calls plays. Not from, you may know it from film, not from practice. And I think that's an advantage for Ohio State. Yes, the fact that Day knows Knowles and Knowles knows Day, those are real things. I don't think Knowles fully understands Brian Hartline's thought process of calling plays, how he's going to map out the first 12 to 15 plays, or what he is going to do with adjustments throughout the game. And I think that's a massive benefit for the Buckeyes as they return to the field tomorrow against the Nittany Lions. One thing left for the show, it's every Friday, it's the last segment of the day, is where you get to hear my score prediction and how I think the game is going to go for tomorrow when Ohio State and Penn State battle it out in the shoe. This episode is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Ohio State, Bo Jackson has delivered in a big way this year. The true freshman running back has burst onto the scene and has proven himself as being Ohio State's best running back in the room. He gets out there. He's very decisive. He turns 2 yard gains into 8 yard gains. And I think, once again, that's going to happen tomorrow afternoon. When the pressure was on, Bo Jackson came through. Guys, there was no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Bo Jackson is on a streak. And just like Bo Jackson delivered for the Buckeyes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash streaks. You save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Once again, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you all for tapping and Locked on Buckeyes and making this show your first listen of the day. I have been nearing I've been nearing finalizing my score prediction for a couple of days. Zach Stako and I of Locked on Nittany Lions did our crossover. It aired on Wednesday, and I aired a number out. And that number can't get out of my head. But before I make it official, as we do at the end of this show, I think there's one thing that gives Ohio State a massive advantage, and which is why I picked Bo Jackson during the DoorDash read just a minute ago. It's the fact that Penn State's defense has struggled stopping the run in Big Ten play. When I say struggled in that way, they have given up 809 rushing yards against 4 Big Ten opponents on 167 carries. That's an average of 4.8 yards a pop. That's against Iowa, Northwestern, UCLA, and Oregon. The least amount of rushing yards they gave up to any opponent in the time was Northwestern. That was 119. They also only scored 1 touchdown. Oregon scored a touchdown. UCLA scored 3 rushing touchdowns. And Iowa also scored 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, I mention that because Ohio State's rushing attack hasn't been the best this year. But I think today or tomorrow is going to be a time where they're turning the page to a new portion of the schedule, and they're turning a page over and running the ball a whole lot better, more consistently, crisper, better blocking up front, better blocking on the perimeter. I think everybody in the operation, all 11 players on the field on any given run play will be better, will be in sync, will be in a unified body, almost like student body right when you were younger in middle school. Hey, student body right. And everybody goes right. Somebody got the ball, and they run it behind the other 10 guys that are trying to block for them. Old USC stuff from back in the day. And I think that is something, not so much the student body right, but the blocking has to be similar. Just doing your job. Be crisp, be physical, pad level. All of the elementary details of blocking must happen on those plays. And I think tomorrow, Ohio State's running game is going to get better. And I wouldn't be shocked if Jackson had 125 yards. I wouldn't be shocked if the team had over 225 rushing yards tomorrow. I'm not sitting here, and I'm not a person that's going to say Ohio State needs to match Iowa, who has had UCLA had more rushing yards than Iowa, but Iowa had the best yards per carry at 7.6 yards a pop when they played and beat Penn State. UCLA had the most total team rushing yards at 269. They also scored 3 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5.1 yards a pop. So I'm not saying they have to match those numbers. I'm saying Ohio State has to show growth in the run game. And I believe they're going to. But here's the issue. Not only the issue, it's the fact that if the run game gets better, that's going to open up things for Sayin to have wider passing lanes and passing windows. They're going to have the ability to get Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate in more one-on-one situations where they won't be stopped if that's what Penn State calls. And I think if the run game is going, That's when Ohio State's offense in the passing game is going to be able to turn it up a little bit and go into another gear, turn up the intensity, and even get the tight ends involved. Because that's almost the one missing link. There are others, but the biggest missing link from Ohio State's offensive attack is a stronger rushing attack. Just stronger. No, I'm not even saying elite right now. It's a regular season. If Ryan wants to slow roll this thing and have elite in the playoff, that's great. I mean, think back to Zeke's run in 2014. I mean, homie went off against who was it? Wisconsin in the Big Ten title, Bama in the semifinal, and then Oregon in the Natty. Zeke went smooth off, and while he went off, it was an expectation for Zeke to do that. Well, I think what's going to happen now is that Ohio State's rushing attack is going to be able to take advantage of a lot of the weaknesses on the front seven, up front six, excuse me, of Penn State's defense. And if they do that, this score prediction seems more realistic. Where I think Ohio State's going to win 42-7. Remember, I told you that I may actually change it a little bit. Originally it was 38-7. I think 42-7 is going to be the score. I was tinkering with would Ohio State hit a field goal or would they hit 2 field goals. I don't think they'll hit 3 or 4 because I don't think they'll be in the position to make that many. But I can see Carnell scoring, but that's it. I don't trust backup quarterbacks. You shouldn't either. No team should trust a backup quarterback against Ohio State's defense. Nobody should. Nobody. You're smart. You're a Buckeye fan. You are very intelligent. You know ball. You know the X's and O's. You may not be an aficionado in the scheme that Ohio State's running. No one's asking you to be an aficionado in Ohio State's scheme. But use your brain and realize, with the knowledge that you have, this is real. 42 for the Buckeyes. 7 for Penn State. Penn State loses yet another Big Ten game. And this one is the worst loss that they have had in the Big Ten of the season. Worst loss of the season, actually, because every Big Ten game they've lost, every loss they've had has been a one-score game. It's not like Penn State's getting rolled. It's a confidence factor. Remember, this team is talented going into the season. We discussed on the show the possibility of this being a 1 versus 2 matchup or at worst a top 5 matchup. We discussed this on this show quite a bit throughout the offseason. And then the next thing you know, once they get out of their very poorly put together non-conference, I say poorly put together because they played cupcakes, man. It was just trash, the trash of the trash. They played cupcakes. They get the Big Ten play. And some of the issues they had in the first 3 games of the year showed up in Big Ten play. Because if you look back, if you remember, you looked at some of them Penn State scores in Penn State games. I remember flipping to the game earlier this year and saying, this score should not be like this. Penn State should be destroying this team. But there were early signs of things unraveling with this Penn State team, and they unraveled in a big, big way after the loss to Oregon. Penn State's issues stopping the run will show up tomorrow. I hope. I don't think that Josh Padilla is going to start tomorrow. I think he's going to rotate in a similar rotation to what you saw in the latter part of last year, especially in the playoff. I think that's going to be what's going to happen with Tegra Shabola, because if Tegra's not getting the job done, and let's just be honest, Tegra has struggled a lot this year. If Tegra's not getting the job done, there is a real life scenario where he can lose a starting spot this year. Maybe Padilla gets a roll against Purdue or against UCLA. I don't see you rolling into Rutgers on senior day, having a new starter, knowing the very next week it's a game against Michigan. I think you want him to have more than one start under his belt before going to Ann Arbor to play the big house. Maybe I'm crazy, but that's just how my mind works. I got Ohio State winning 42-7. I think the Buckeyes running game is going to be big tomorrow. I don't think that Penn State is going to be able to slow down Ohio State's offense at all. I think defensively, they are going to suffocate Penn State. I mean, literally suffocate them to the point that they have no juice left. What's your thought? Who do you think wins and what's your score prediction for tomorrow's game. Thank you all for tapping in Locked On Buckeyes and making this show your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big Ten. Craig Shima breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championship and every game in between. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube as well as Locked On Buckeyes, or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One quick programming note: we will be live after tomorrow's game, live on the YouTube. Find Locked On Buckeyes on YouTube. Search it, subscribe, hit that bell so you're notified when we go live. You can follow me on any social media platform or jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes on a Friday. We'll see you tomorrow after the game.